So, welcome to episode 3. In the last episode, we talked about the stage that happens before you implement changes in your life where you are struggling, you have anxiety maybe or depression, and you don't know what to do with your life. And then something maybe happens where you feel like you want or you have to do a change. And we also talked a little bit about the initiate habits that you do once you start your self-improvement journey. And in this episode, we want to go deeper on this phase where you are implementing change and when you start to see results, instant and delayed gratifications, like we mentioned in the last episode. So, Mo, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about what makes you implement change? What is something that people misunderstand on why you would do a change?
I feel like a lot of people, because like we always get told either from society, from parents, from people we love, or friends, or whatever, that time heal all wounds, and that with time things will change, or throughout the time you're gonna discover new things. People talk about all different kind of things, but what I've had to come to realize is that actually time doesn't do much to you. It's about you wanting to change, because you know how there's people who actually start working on themselves around the age of 25, 30. And then you've got people who wait till the age of 40 or 50. I feel like time at some point matters, because when you cross a certain threshold, that's when you start feeling the pressure of time. But at the same time, it's about the willingness that I want to change. It's, I guess, what I've heard it on Chris Williams' podcast again, and he talked about when the pain of who you are right now becomes bigger than the pain of change. So technically, say you're not happy with who you are right now and you want to do some changes, but for whatever the reason that is, you're just holding yourself back. And when the pain of who you are right now, of the things that you do, whether it's depression, you hate yourself, or whatever it is, starts becoming bigger and more overwhelming than the pain of actually changing and doing something new, I feel like that's when a lot of people start taking the first steps toward change. But I would definitely think about time, because I feel like that's a big lie that we've been told our entire lives, and still a lot of people talk about it and in a way believe it.
Okay, I would say I wouldn't call it a lie myself, but I think it is something that is exaggerated, because I do think that time does play a role, because the older you get, the more experiences that you have, and you automatically start to change his ways in your behavior. And I noticed that mostly, like I remember when I was 24 years old and now I am 29 years old, there are certain things that time actually helped me to change, where I became calmer and I started to care less about what other people think of me. But I also think that time is not enough to actually implement change. I think it's all about the struggles that you have, the experiences that you had. Like, there are people who are maybe 14, 15 years old who experience a lot of trauma for that age. And sure, some of them go on a destructive path and they ruin themselves. But there's also a lot of people who realize that they need to change something in their life and that they need to improve something. And they start with their self-improvement journey in a very young age. And I've actually known multiple people who were in that situation. So I think it's more related to that. How much did you suffer in your life, and how big is your trauma? I think these things play a bigger role on if you're going to change or not.
Pain is the best teacher after all.
Exactly. And that's why I like to see a silver lining in every bad thing. Like, we come from Syria and the war started there, and it's a terrible thing. But for me, it was silver lining because I managed to live there, and that was the beginning of some kind of change. You know what I mean? And also when COVID came, it's also a terrible thing. But this, where we had to stay at home and we can't go to our jobs and meet our friends, this was actually the time where I started with my self-improvement journey. Like, I became way more introspective and thinking about my life and my problems. And maybe if COVID didn't happen, that wouldn't have started. So I think it's really about your trauma, your problems, how much are you struggling, and another big thing that maybe we can talk about later is our influences. Maybe you are listening to a podcast randomly, or a YouTube video where you hear people talking about change and something starts to spark. Maybe not now, maybe later.
Yeah.
But influence plays a big role on us, you know?
I feel like we also can't forget about the story that we tell ourselves. Because we go back to that same example where you can have two people who were born, raised in the same place, went through the same stuff, and one of them ends up being, I don't know, we're going to go to the extreme, why not? A serial killer. And then you've got the other one who can go ahead and be a really successful person who helps other people or does something major in their life. And I think it's related to the story that you tell yourself, in the sense of, are you over victimizing yourself, or are you trying to tell like, okay, this is what I went through, I can't really change it, but I should try my best to at least learn what I can learn from that and try to implement that change in order to go to the next chapter of my life.
Yeah.
So I agree with what you've said, but I feel it's all also related. So life experience is definitely needed. I don't know if you need to go through trauma and a lot of suffering so you can start working on yourself or start changing who you are.
It's a factor. It's
a factor.
It's not a necessity.
It makes a lot of things easier as well, because when you... It doesn't make things easier. I just want to be clear here. I think when you go through hardships in life, it kind of forces you to go introspective.
Yeah.
Because you have to process these things or think about them. And if you don't, they're going to haunt you at some day. So it makes maybe the initiative phase of change a bit easier. But on the other hand, is that the story that you tell yourself about what you went through and the way that you justify it also matters. Because, you know, when people say that villains and heroes have exactly the same background, it's just that the hero have decided that this is what I went through. I don't want that on anybody else, or I want to make myself and the world a better place. Or the villain that goes like, okay, this is what happened to me, and I want to inflict the same kind of pain and suffering on other people or on the world.
To add up to that, I also think it's not something that is completely under your control, because I think your genes also play a role on why are you telling yourself that story. So, like, even if you decide to implement change, I would say there is a luck factor in it, sure. Like, what were the circumstances that has put you on this path? You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying that every decision you're making is not your own or anything, but like, we need to have more empathy and sympathy to, like, there are people who need more time and like they need longer period to figure out that they need to change something, and other people figure that out pretty fast. You know, some people start to change when they're 20 years old, some people 30, 40, as you have mentioned before. So it is never too late to change, and we can't expect that everyone is going to go through the same experience in the same order at the same time.
My question to that would be, so I'm not really familiar with the topic at all. So my question would be, is it related to the genes that you have, or is it related to the psychological traits that you were raised into, or the psychological traits that you picked up throughout your life?
I think it's both. I think both, like everything we are doing, our genes and our upbringing play a huge part in that. Not everything, but they play a huge part. It's the same when like you were talking about a serial killer. If we think about a psychopath, like he was born in that way. So automatically, the story he tells himself, if he had trauma, is going to be more evil. It's going to be more harmful. But if you weren't born with these psychopathic traits, the story you tell yourself is going to be more empathic. So people are born with more empathy.
That's true. But yeah, going on from there, you've determined that you wanted to change yourself. To change yourself or change your life. You wanted something more. Let's put it like this. That's a really subjective thing that people get to decide to put their own what they want from that. And you started implementing change. We've talked about delayed gratifications. We've talked about habits, habit stacking, switching habits. We talked about discipline. And I'm just going to take a little bit of skip here, because I feel like discipline, habits, and delayed gratifications are stuff that people got to decide on their own whether they want that or not, and how they want to implement that in their lives. Sure, we're probably going to talk about it later on, but for now, I want to talk a little bit about what comes in the middle of change. and we're gonna go back to the same person.
I think I'm following what you're probably talking about the lonely chapter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're always gonna go back to Chris Williams and his podcasts.
I mean, like the lonely chapter itself is very crucial because
before you start talking about that, maybe we should take a step back and explain to people what the lonely chapter is.
Oh yeah, that's
because not everyone knows what a lonely chapter is. Keep that in mind.
I mean, the term itself, the lonely chapter, is something that we both heard from the Chris Williamson podcast, but I think he also heard it from somewhere else, you know.
Possibly.
But it's basically like this stage in your self-improvement where you're kind of stuck in the middle. You're starting to see changes in your life. You're implementing new habits, new routines, but you also kind of feel like your older life is slipping away, and maybe you miss some parts of it. You miss your old friends. You don't have new friends yet. You're still doing that change. You lost most people in your life, not necessarily, of course, and you're still discovering this new life that you're still not so used to. You know, you're discovering this new world while leaving that old world behind.
I feel like it's also related to the way that you define yourself, because look at it like this: so far in your life, you've had a self-image. You've built up that self-image of yourself that you've been working on, or just happened to be built that way, and then suddenly you're trying to switch that self-image into something else. And I feel like that's where we're talking about exactly the clash happens of like, I don't know who I am right now because I'm working on myself. So you're feeling kind of lost.
Yeah, your identity.
But at the same time, that older self of you, that self-image that you've had so far, feels so familiar. And I've came up with I don't know if somebody else talked about this or not, but this is genuinely just my own thoughts. Analogy to this that goes like, the brain wants more, the body wants what's known, and the soul just wants rest. And I could identify that, or that resonated with me throughout my lonely chapter so much, because in my mind, I've always tried to go to the next chapter, and I want to do this and that. I want to implement this change. But at the same time, my body, and by body, I mean here the subconscious, because by scientific research nowadays, it's been proven that your body and your subconscious are related to each other.
Absolutely.
Your body wants what's known. That means that your body knows what it has had so far.
What it's used to.
What it's used to, exactly. So the body knows, for example, that you don't go near fire because it's going to burn you. Because it knows that. So the body starts trying to fight you to going back to what you wanted before.
It's protecting you, in a sense. Like your instincts.
Fear of the unknown.
Your instincts.
Exactly. And then when I said the soul needs or wants rest, by that, soul is really a subjective thing for everybody. What I mean by that is
our being.
Exactly. Like deep down, I think when you go through that chapter, deep down, a part of you just wants to rest.
Yeah.
A part of you just wants to take a break from this inner clash that you have.
Sure.
From the who am I kind of question, where do I fit in this world kind of questions.
Because remember that these are all abstract questions, like your identity, who am I? You're just formulating that, bringing ideas and accumulating these ideas to form this identity. So it's I think, like for me, I see it's logical that your inner self or your soul, whatever you want to call it, wants the rest, because this is your being. It just want to be. You want to be in the moment, not planning for the future or thinking what other people think of you. These are all in our just ideas in our head.
I feel like because you also focus up a little bit too much on ideas that you want to do this and that, or you should have done this and that. I feel like you forget to do things that you genuinely enjoy.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Sure. Take for an example someone who enjoys being in nature, and they get too preoccupied with their to-do list, their mental checklists, what they have to do, how they have to behave.
We struggle to experience joy.
Exactly, and then you get stuck in that mental checklist or a cage in your brain that, okay, I've got this, and this, and I need to do all of them so I can feel somewhat safe about who I am. And then you focus too much on that you forget that I'm actually someone who enjoys nature. I actually want to go out and take a walk in the park. That's where you
forget parts of yourself.
And I feel that's where you start getting this tiredness, and you kind of, your body in a way is telling you, or your subconscious is telling you that we need what I'm going to call soul nourishment, in the sense of doing stuff that actually make you feel joyful. And make you feel grateful and agency toward life, yourself, and everybody else.
I think this is basically what change is. Like change is getting closer to who you are, in a sense. You've been doing a lot of different things, maybe talking about influence again, like maybe other people told you to do that, like your parents, your friends, they were telling you what to do. You started to do this, you pursued a career, you had these ideas, and you formulated this fake identity. And when you want to implement change, you're basically trying to get closer to your essence, to who you were as a child, the things that you enjoy more, the things that brings you more value, the things that give you more purpose and meaning in life. And change is basically this transition from your fake self to your core, to your inner.
I wouldn't call it fake self, but I feel like that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, it's a bit subjective.
I prefer the term. It's just terminology here. I know what you mean, and I agree with you, but I just prefer the term the mask or the persona.
The mask, but yeah.
Fake self sounds like as if you're faking it on purpose. The persona is like something that you've created or you've put on subconsciously.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it on purpose.
Yeah, I get your point. It's I wouldn't say it is something that you do on purpose, that's for sure. It's just, you're not in control where you are born and stuff, and the ideas that you hear. So you start to do things that are not necessarily in your control when you're a teenager and stuff. And then you grow older, you start to understand yourself and the world more. And that's where you realize, I've been doing all of these things that I don't want to do, and now I have to change. Now I want to make the change. So that's where you start to do things on purpose. You actually do things to have agency in your life, which was not existing, or maybe very little.
Limited.
I
feel as well that when you start implementing stuff, or when you start changing or doing things, and again, in relation to the lonely chapter and everything, you're like, which is a really big topic on its own, which is self-acceptance.
Oh, yeah.
Self-acceptance, I'm going to be quite harsh about it. There's no need to mistake self-acceptance to this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be for the rest of my life. That's not self-acceptance. But like self-acceptance is, I'm going to actually take the example from a couple of days ago when I was talking to you at work and I was feeling really low that day. And I was telling you that I kind of don't want to go to the gym. And I kind of wanted to slack on some stuff for a couple of days so I can get some rest. And I think that's where what I called, at least, I don't know if that's the correct term, higher ego, maybe you want to call it higher self, which I define as someone who's watching you. You are watching you from up above, from a third person perspective, kind of telling yourself about the stuff that you should be doing for the future you, and that you've got to push through some things through life. And I remember telling you that I didn't want to go to the gym. I was kind of going in a different direction. I was leaning toward to what's known for me.
Yeah.
And then at some point it was more like, there's no need to go back. I'm just going to accept the fact that I'm not feeling well today. I'm feeling really low, mentally, physically, emotionally.
Take a rest.
And then I decided that, okay, we're going to go to the gym. We're going to do the things that we were supposed to do. But we're going to keep in mind that we're not 100% there. So for that day, for example, I did a couple of stuff that I wanted to do anyways. But I didn't give my 100%.
Yeah.
I gave which we talked about as well. Like I gave my capacity that day, let's say it was about 50%. And I gave 50% of that day. And I pushed myself beyond that. I didn't go to 100%, of course. And I think self-acceptance is where you go like, that was my capacity for today. I've pushed beyond my capacity a little bit. I didn't give my best today because I couldn't give my best for whatever the circumstances are. But I've still done more than enough to know that I didn't lose the momentum. I'm not actually slacking. But at the same time, I'm accepting the fact that this is what I'm going to be able to do for today. And you still find the peace of, this is the stage that I'm in right now in my life. Whether it's the fact that you're unable to focus on too many things, whether it's the fact that you're unable to be vulnerable around people, share things.
Yeah.
And I feel like self-acceptance there plays a huge role where you kind of are a little bit more forgiving toward yourself, but at the same time, you're not getting too comfortable in whatever zone you're getting in, but instead you're just like, okay, this is the phase that we're in. This is the place that I want to go to. for me to get there, I need to follow these steps, but I need to know and recognize that it's going to be up and down.
Yeah, you need to be patient with yourself. This is actually something that I struggle with a lot, like the self-acceptance. And I think it's something that goes beyond the lonely chapter. You know, even if you're if you've been implementing change for 10 years or 20 years and you're way beyond in your self-improvement journey, I think you still might struggle with the self-acceptance issue, which is what I hear from many people, many podcasters that I like, or book authors. They also struggle with this problem sometimes, with the self-acceptance that you're not doing enough. And yeah, it is something that I struggle with a lot. I would say I'm getting better at it, but I'm still like, it's a big struggle for me, because when there are days when I have less energy and I can't do as much as my most productive days, that's where at the end of the day, sometimes I feel guilty, like, oh, I could have probably done more. And yeah, so what I'm trying to learn is that I need to know my capacities, what works for me the best. So for example, in the past, I was thinking that I can focus on improving 2 things at the same time by giving 50% each. And what happened is every day I would focus on these 2 things, which for me are making videos on my YouTube channel and drawing, which is something that I like to do as a hobby. And I thought that I could give the same amount of focus and energy for both of these activities. And I've always gotten frustrated, like, oh, some days I'm focusing on drawing more, other days I'm focusing on videos more, and then I feel guilty because I didn't give the same energy to the other activity. Until I realized that this is something I can't really do. That's where I started to accept that I am not able to work on these things the same amount. So I should focus on one thing, make it the priority, and the other thing has to take the back seat, which is what I did. And now I focus on, we're starting this podcast and I'm doing my videos. This is for me now the priority. And the drawing took the back seat. And now I feel much better and I accept that. And this is just the way it is. So yeah, it's still something I struggle with a lot. But, there are days where they are better than other days. And
for sure.
I think it's something you have to live with. Like there are days where you're not going to be able to love yourself or accept yourself as much as you usually do. And this I would call these like your low days, or the days where you feel that something is off, and this is natural. We are humans, we are emotional, and we can't really avoid that. Like you can't have your best days every day for the rest of your life.
What you were just saying made me think of 2 things, to be honest. The first one is that when you were talking about not every day is the same day and priorities. So the first thing is that you've got to put priorities. You have to set priorities on. You can't expect yourself at the same time to have it figured out by day 1, and you can't expect yourself to know what your priorities are from day 1. It's going to take you time. It's going to take a lot of experimenting. It's going to take a lot of work. And that leads to the point that life is not a steady point. It's not a steady line. Yeah. It's not linear, exactly. Some days are going to be better. Some days are going to be worse. Then you're going to have better days. You're going to have worse days. And then sometimes it's going to be like worse and worse and worse and worse. And then sometimes it's going to peak and get to a better point. The funny thing is, when we were just talking about this, I literally just thought about it like, all the self-acceptance and all the this and this that we're talking about made me just think that it's actually just about being in the moment. Because if you are in the moment, like
you're not worrying. You're
exactly. So say you're just in the moment and you're just drawing. Gotta take as an example here.
Flow state.
You're just drawing and you're just in the moment of drawing.
Yeah.
You're just gonna draw and draw and draw until like you think that you don't want to draw anymore, or I don't know, something happens and you decided that okay, that's enough for now.
Yeah.
And then you go and you start doing something else, which is videos, YouTube, whatever it is that you're gonna do next. And you don't start worrying about how much you did or how much energy did you give for the previous activity and how much you're going to have for the activity that comes afterwards.
You just focus on the activity,
that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
And that's just like being in the moment.
Yeah,
it can be summarized so easily.
And this is not easy. Like this is something you learn. Sure. And I think if it is something that you don't enjoy doing, it's a big struggle to do. That's why you need...
Also, we're not really used to being in the moment. Yeah. If you look at a lot
especially
of things,
in modern society,
for sure, because like say, which is something that I've noticed a lot. Like, say you're on the train, say you're at a coffee shop, in a restaurant, I don't know, you're on vacation. We all have these tendencies, and I'm just one of these people. Like, I'm not excluding myself here, where you're just gonna get your phone, you're just gonna, I don't know, go on social media, do this and this, instead of just being actually in the moment. Just like, you know, how people listen to music, for example, and read a book at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do that.
You're all over the place, and you don't have like, okay, I'm just here right now. I'm just here.
Yeah, I would say it is a big struggle, and it's something you learn, and it does require a long time, because we are born in this modern culture and society where we have technologies everywhere. And you grow up, we both grew up with computers and then smartphones.
It's a globalized society.
And now it's getting only worse, because you see like these little children who are like 5-6 years old and they have the big tablet in their hands. So I think it's a problem that's only going to get worse. But what we can do is just like spread that knowledge. Like, well, that's what people can do, like how to appreciate the moment, because we are losing the moment more and more. With time passes, the more we advance, the more technology and distractions we have, the harder it becomes to appreciate the moment. And relating to that is flow state. Flow state is the feeling you get where you lose track of time. You're not thinking about the past or the future. You're just in the moment. And to be in this flow state, more often than not, you need to do things that you enjoy. So if you are in a career, or if you're trying to improve at something that you're not really enjoying, you just feel that you are forced to do it, then it's going to be tougher to...
My question to that is, would you define flow state as being in the moment, or would you define it more as extreme concentration?
It is both. Okay. Because when you are extremely concentrated and you're enjoying the process, nothing else matters.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That's
you're
true.
just
that's
in the
true.
moment. You're doing the thing. Sometimes, like the easiest example to give for flow state is playing video games.
Yeah,
they do put you in a flow state because it is something that you enjoy doing, and you're highly concentrated.
Yeah.
So it is the easiest way to access flow state. So that's why I think it is the best example. It is a way where everyone can reach flow state, you know. So this is where you're like, nothing else matters. The hours passes, and then you end the activity, and then you realize, oh, 3 hours have passed.
Exactly. I was gonna say, which is where probably a lot of people start playing with the idea of mind that they can only do like an hour or maybe 2 hours of video games.
That's why it can be highly addictive.
The day is over at
That's
some
why
point.
It can be highly addictive. It's easy access to this amazing feeling that I think we should strive to reach more and more in our lives, but maybe in healthier ways, like things that would actually matter in our future, like gaining knowledge or developing a skill. Yeah.
I feel it's still also fine if they, you know, even Mark Manson talked about it when he said that he always just wanted to get so rich and so successful so he has time for his video games. I feel like if you're actually passionate about video games and you're not abusing it, technically you can abuse anything in life as long, or once you start doing it too much. I feel like there's a healthy line.
Yeah, absolutely.
A healthy silver lining of like, is this good? Is this healthy? Is this doing me any harm? Is it leading me somewhere? And the question is always to ask, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Because if you're just gaming, or you're using games, for example, or whatever it is, even social media or YouTube or anything, as sort of an escapism, then I think that's not really a good place to be in. So you might want to redefine a lot of things in your life.
Yeah, it's just in moderation. Like I like to put video games in the same category as social media or drugs.
Yeah.
Like in moderation, you know what you're doing, you have intention, and you're not just escaping from your emotions or your problems. So I don't see these things as like bad things, but if you abuse them, they become really bad for you.
Exactly.
So the problem are not these activities, not the video games, not the drugs, not social media. If you know what you're doing, you're using them in healthy ways, then they can be good in your life as a rest, as a break, as just having joy and being in flow state. So I would say it's in moderation, you know. But the other part of flow state is the things that you're working on that are good for your future and you enjoy doing. Like, I don't know, you're learning a new skill, you're learning an instrument, you're learning how to draw, you're learning how to make videos or make a podcast. Like even the podcast that we're having, I already do notice that sometimes we are like talking and I forget that we're talking to a camera and it's something that we're gonna upload. You know, we're just having conversation.
Exactly.
So in a sense, you can also have flow state when you're talking to somebody. So yeah.
Fair enough. That's gonna bring me, to be honest, to my next point, which is in relation to everything that we've talked about, whether it's a good or bad thing, it's acknowledging stuff. The reason I'm saying stuff here is because I feel like acknowledging things is a huge spectrum. You can acknowledge the bad things that you do, which is like, okay.
You mean self-awareness? Like
self-awareness, which is like, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. And I'm going to acknowledge the fact that we're going to go back to video games or social media as an escapism, to be honest, you know? And when you are honest with yourself about it and you acknowledge the fact that this is why I'm doing this and this is how I've been abusing this so far, I feel like that opens up a lot of doors for you to go to different directions. Then we're going to go to the other end of the spectrum from acknowledgements, which is, and I guess a lot of people struggle with this. I've struggled with this myself for a while. I think I'm doing way better in it right now, which is acknowledge the hardships that you go through. I'm pretty sure that I mentioned this before, but say you went through a specific scenario and that specific scenario taught you something. And then you went into something similar again. And then it was something that you learned from it again and again and again. And at some point, you have to acknowledge the fact that you went through so many things in your life. And so all of them amount to something. But at the same time, the way that I look at it, they kind of build up a stack of proof of the things that you're able to do and the things that you're getting better at.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I'm going to take the most boring example of this, which is bureaucracy, paperwork. The first time you do it, it's annoying, it's boring, you don't know what you're doing, you're lost. Exactly.
It's one of my... It's on the top list of the things that I hate in this life.
Same. But if you're going to take an example and then like you've been doing paperwork for like, I don't know, let's say a year or two.
You get used to it.
At some point, you get used to it, you know how to do it. And when something happens again in the future and you're just like, oh fuck, that's going to lead to a lot of paperwork, you just have to remind yourself that
you've been through this before.
I've been through this multiple times before.
Like you can give so many examples of that.
Then, exactly. You can take this like on change, take it on dating, take it on relationships, friendships, losing people.
Like an example from my life, like I've met and lost a lot of people in my life. And at this point, I'm just used to it. Like I don't want to lose anybody that I love. But when it happens, I know I can go through it. Exactly. I know I can recover. And yeah, it's just the way it is.
You just have this stack of proof.
That's why hardships are, sure, they are painful. I don't wish that on anybody, but they're going to happen anyway.
They're necessary.
It doesn't matter who you are. If they don't happen in your teenage years or 20s or even 30s, they're going to happen in your 30s. They are eventual. So this is something that we can think about when we have the hardship that, what can I learn from this?
It's,
you know, like there are lessons, there are things, there is a positive side. And it's not egoistic to think about that when you're having the hardship. It is something to cope with, because if you're not coping, it means you are thinking about this problem and the terrible fate that happened to you and victimizing yourself. And that's where you can go in a very deep hole that is really hard to get out of.
They can be really destructive.
So having this practice, making it a habit to think about the positive things in any bad thing that happens to you I think is life-changing. You know, but it's also not easy. You have to go through the hardships to start developing that habit. If you don't have hardships, you're just gonna imagine it. Or
I feel like hardships are gonna happen either ways.
They're gonna shock you, and it's gonna be painful, and it's gonna be hard, no matter how prepared you are. But how long do you stay in that?
I'm just gonna put it out there as a quote that it's not from me. I've heard it somewhere. I don't remember who said it, to be honest. But the quote goes like, "Life always brings people on their knees, and those it doesn't bring down on their knees, it kills." So it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter. You can be literally the happiest person on the planet. You can literally be having the best time in your life. Life is gonna happen. And when I say life, that's again a bit subjective, but we can go with like circumstances or
bad things,
luck or bad things. Something's gonna happen.
something that are going against your way.
Exactly. Something is gonna happen that something is can be destructive, can just push you a little bit back. And just exactly what I said, I feel like the most important thing to keep in mind there is that there's always something to learn from that. And once you've learned what you had to learn from that, that just goes into who you are and the stack proof about how to overcome other things in the future. Of course, having that mindset is, I feel like I'm just repeating you here, but I just wanted to add this segment in between, which is you have to go through the hardships, like you said. But I feel in between there's also the phase where you process what you went through, why you went through it, what caused it, and then you ask yourself the honest question: what can I possibly learn from this?
Yeah.
And you try to learn the lesson, and then afterwards you ask yourself again: did I learn my lesson, or is there something else that I haven't learned yet?
Yeah.
And it's just a repetition, which is again acknowledging things and having stack proof that you can have such habits that can lead to, I don't want to say easier future or easier life, because I feel like it's not that things get easier. It's just that you get used to certain things, and once you get used to
I think it's just a stage of pain.
Just more things come across.
It gets shorter. Like your pain, how long it goes. How long are you going to be angry? How long are you going to be sad? How long are you going to be depressed? You're going to feel this emotion. We talked about it in the last
the pitfalls that you fall into.
Exactly, and they just get shorter. You get more knowledgeable. You have more self-awareness, so you know how to get out of it. You're still going to fall, no matter what.
Like, but you're going to know your way out.
You're going to know your way out. You already know where the ladder is and how to go up.
Exactly.
But in the first few times, you're just in darkness. You don't know your left from right. You don't know where to go. There's nothing to hang on to. But then slowly you start to see all the signs. How do I get out of it? You know? And I think another lesson in philosophy that helps with this is just trying to see our experiences in an objective way, where nothing that happens to you is necessarily objectively good or bad. It's just something that happened. It doesn't matter how bad it is, how evil it is. Objectively, it's just an experience. So maybe it's very difficult, but if you try to detach yourself, which also requires self-awareness, like to detach yourself and seeing this from different eyes, like it's an experience. So this might also with time, like make the emotions not as intense, the negative emotions, like detaching yourself. So meditation plays a big role in that, of course. So yeah.
Maybe even the phrasing about things and just getting new perspective, I guess, is a good thing. Whether it's perspective that you've thought of yourself or perspective that came from the outside, as long as you're getting a new perspective, or you're trying to detach yourself from things and just live your life, I think that's a good way to start, especially when I feel like sometimes people go through a little bit too much of self-inflicting pain of phase, where people just like something happens in their life and they focus on the outcome, the reason why it happened, and they try to take it in a way subconsciously, of course. I don't think anyone does it on purpose, and use that event to inflict pain on themselves.
Yeah, it's like suffering. It's like
exactly.
We've talked about this a lot, like you and I, about
and when you detach yourself from that, just like you said, I think that gives you like, so look at it like this is you, this is the event technically. You're using that event to inflict pain on yourself, and the second that you detach yourself, you're just like looking at it from up above, and you're realizing, oh wait, technically I'm just holding into this so I can cause pain to myself.
You're making cause
because of whatever reason is from the past or from my past.
You're just looking for cause and effect.
Exactly.
Well, there is no cause, and there is an experience that happened. Bad or good. It's an experience.
Exactly.
So I think these two things two big things that we mentioned can really help with, coping with the struggle and knowing how to move on. So I think this leads us to, maybe we can talk a little bit about, instant and delayed gratification as a theme, because you know, whether you're in the lonely chapter or after that stage, it's the moments where you realize that you've been spending so much of your time maybe doing things that gives you instant pleasure, whether it is social media or video games or taking drugs, whatever the activity is, something that makes you happy in the moment, but might have consequences later. While when you start to implement good habits, when you start to do things that might take time, when you start to have more patience with yourselves, that's where you actually realize the importance of delayed gratification and why it is the thing that matters in life.
This is something that just came up to me, to be honest, when you were talking about it. And I feel like, I think there's like perspective shift that you can have, which is, I don't know if it's the right thing to talk about this or not, but regardless of that, when you look at the instant gratification things, you can also kind of define them as delayed gratifications. In the sense of, you can get instant gratification from everything, literally from even the things that are supposed to be delayed. So say we're going to take gym as an example again. So you're going to the gym because you've got a goal that you want to get to. All right. And that's delayed gratification. You're going to go to the gym X amount of time a week, work towards something so you can get to that goal. But at the same time, I feel like you can connect that experience to instant gratification in the sense of like you left the gym and you felt proud about yourself.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
Sure.
And I feel the shift is really needed to think about it in the sense of delayed gratification, because not everything that happens in life, even when you go through hardships, and you can take the lesson that you learned from that phase as a delayed gratification toward your future. But you can't take that lesson as an instant gratification, because you're not going to learn what you were supposed to learn instantly. It's going to take you time.
Takes time. Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
And talking about delayed gratification, I feel just the fact that our society is, I feel like the time that we live in right now, with the technology, internet, the globalizations, and everything else.
It's all about the instant gratification.
Exactly. You literally don't have to wait. Because I remember when in our society, I guess, when we were kids, things were a bit different. Because I remember that if you wanted to watch something, if you wanted to watch a cartoon or something, you're going to have to wait till the next episode shows up on the TV the week after you've seen this episode.
So there was
this period of
this gap.
There was this gap where okay, I'm gonna try to work on everything that I have to do and finish it before the next episode comes out next week. So when it comes out, I have time to watch it on TV.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas nowadays,
you can instantly watch it on your phone.
You can instantly watch anything.
Like, this is the thing. Like, I think it is important to mention this topic because, like, when you're learning how to change, when you're improving your life, it really takes time, and you need to find the balance between doing the things that you find fun, you enjoy in your life, which give you instant gratification, and setting goals based on delayed gratification. You know, like I think delayed gratification should be the main focus. You know, what am I working on? How do I want to?
I don't think we're actually wired for instant gratification.
No.
Just to interrupt you there. Sorry about that, but I don't think we're wired in the first place for instant gratification, because you can look at it like this. Our ancestors, or like the beginning of times, where human beings would.
I would say it's the opposite.
Hunting.
It was the opposite, I would say. Like, we are not wired for delayed gratification. It's something that we started learning with time when we built civilization and stuff, and we started to see, we can do things for the future. Like, look at animals who doesn't have the brain development that we have, who are just doing things in the moment. You know, they're just eating the food.
That's true.
You know, so it's something that slowly came with time when we started to develop our brain more for logical thinking and steps 1, 2, 3. This leads to this. That's where delayed gratification comes. That's why I think it is the opposite, actually, that we're not really wired for delayed gratification. That's why society is trying to make life easier and easier. You know, like,
that's actually quite.
This is what comes naturally to us, but we need to train ourselves to put ourselves on a leash, be disciplined, and have patience with ourselves to learn how to wait for things And of course, I'm not saying that our life should be absent of the instant gratification. No, like this should be like the rewards that you have, the mini rewards. Like, oh, I've done this important thing that is good for my future. Okay, now I can relax, have fun with whatever activities that I like to do. That gives me the instant gratification. So it goes back to being self-aware, having intention, doing things on purpose. You know why you're playing the video games. You know why you're doing that activity. You're not running away from your problems. You're just relaxing. You know?
Would delayed gratification give you a way to detach yourself from what's going on? Because when we were talking about this, and then I end up thinking as well, in the sense of like, if you are trying to work on things and get the gratification out of it later in your life, and then you suddenly start doing something that's bad for you, or you're abusing something too much.
You go back to that.
Exactly. You go back to that baseline of like delayed gratification, and you realize like, oh wait, maybe I'm doing something wrong here, and then it bounces you back into the delayed gratification.
100%. Like even when we go back to the point where if you have something really bad happens to you right now, if you think about your future self, the delayed gratification that in a year, in 10 years, this will be small. I will go over this. Or maybe you're just having an argument with someone you love and you're really angry. You think about your future self after a year, after 10 years, where this is just a small thing.
Gives you a bit of a detachment.
Like maybe it's not completely related to the instant delayed gratification, but it works in similar ways, you know, like just thinking about your future self so that you can live this moment in a better way, in a healthier way. So yeah, that's how I would connect these things.
Quite interesting, because even when we were talking about society and that we're making things easier because we're using instant gratification, that kind of just resonated with me, to be honest. And I've been thinking about it right now.
Yeah, it's a very big philosophical topic, you know.
But there seems to be onto something. I think
it's good to go back in history, like when you notice that the further you go back, the simpler life was, and the less people used their brain. That's where you see, like, you know, we were just more simple.
We were just living instinct.
Just living on our instincts with very like basic thought process, but we only got better at using our brain, and then our brains got bigger, and you know, it's only going forward in that direction, which is good and bad. Like I would never go back to being, I don't know if it's a bad word to use here, but dumber than now, you know, like we were just more dumb than we are now, which is
I don't know if we can look at it like this.
It's not something necessarily negative, it's just a fact, you know, like
I don't know if maybe that's where we differ, because when someone talks about it in that way, I always wonder about what calculations are you basing this on? Because we're not really as smart nowadays. It's just that we have access to a lot of things.
Yeah, but these tools,
this access or the things that we have access to is built on stuff from the past.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? But
so that raises up the question of...
I'm just gonna cut just to mention this, that like I think sure we built upon things that people before us built, but we have access to more tools and more knowledge, and this makes us smarter. We are not born smarter. That make sense?
That doesn't make you smarter. That just makes you lucky to be alive in this era.
We are absolutely
to have this access. Yeah. At least that's how I would define it.
These are different things that helps you use your brain in a more in a stronger way, or like you're just
in
using
a more
capacity.
Way.
Yeah. Which people didn't have access for. So I think you're right. Like it's not necessarily that people were dumber, you know, or we were born dumber. It's not even what I mean. Like it's just that with all the advances that we're having and stuff, like we're just using our brains more and more and more and more, and that's why we become better at calculating things and predicting the future. And
we're evolving,
thinking about the delayed gratification. You know,
we're evolving, or maybe not evolving here, but the technology and all the development that we're going through right now is going at an incredible speed, to be honest.
Yeah, like
it's going to be interesting to see where all this leads up to one day.
It's a good example.
Life by then.
I think it's a good example
like to see where all of this leads to.
Yeah, I would say just a good example for that is if you look at a third world country and you compare, let's say, the country we grew up in Syria, and you compare it to the USA, where in our country most people are living on instant gratification. We don't even learn how to think about delayed gratification. But you go to the US, this is a core thing in the culture to think about the future, to plan for the future. And both of these things have bad side and a good side. The people in Syria, maybe they're enjoying their lives more in the moment. And the people in the US have more stress, have more anxiety because they keep thinking about the future.
Exactly.
So I think Mark Manson mentioned that.
He talked about this,
like how it's
you
gain things
culture.
And you take things out. It's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. Exactly. That's the word I'm looking for.
It's trade-off.
I think that's it. So
we went off a lot.
Yeah,
we went off a lot.
I think it's a good point to end it on.
For the next episodes, we're probably gonna be ending up with our own story sometime soon. Hopefully, 1 or 2 more episodes, and then
we're just gonna go on and
at some point we're gonna get into more specific topics that we actually want to talk about, because I don't feel like we've mentioned in the first episode or the second episode, all of this talk is just about giving people a chance to be able to relate to us, maybe have a little bit of a connection to who we are and why we talk about the things that we talk about and the reason why we think the way that we think. But at some point in the near future, for sure, we're going to be not switching off, but we're going to be going into just more specific topics that are not only related to us, but
things
that are just
maybe
related
more
to
objective
the world. Exactly.